We're just trying to reach out. We're just having fun here. And certainly it could be about anything. It's all ridiculous to me. The fact that we all obsess over guys with blades on their feet chasing around a rubber puck, like that in itself is hilarious to me. So, I mean, it's cool that we can meet on this kind of level. So I'm super stoked you're here. All right.
Yeah,
if you don't mind, I'd like to start off with a question.
Sure. Actually, I have a not really a gift, but a surprise for you first.
Okay.
Okay. I feel like I'm kind of coming in.
It's not gonna get me banned off of Twitch, is it, man? I don't know the rules here. I'm trusting you right now, man.
Yeah. No. I feel like I'm coming into a like almost like a road game here. Because obviously it's your audience and stuff. I mean, I brought some people over too, but it's not my platform. So I feel like I just kind of got to bring some intimidation for myself. So I'm just I'm not gonna be able to hear you for a second, but
all right.
I just felt like I had to kind of even the playing. Again, I have not released my favorite team on Instagram. And I don't plan on doing it, so people shouldn't read into this too much, but I feel like I just got to level the playing field of intimidation, so.
All right. Nice.
I felt like I had to rock a jersey, too, so.
You know what? I appreciate that. I also appreciate the fact that, you came prepared, because you knew a guy like me would probably try and find out who your favorite team was, and I couldn't. I couldn't find it out. And I'm like, all right, fair enough. He wants to keep it neutral like that. I was gonna probably ask you what your favorite team was, just kind of see what's going on. And I know you're not saying don't read into it. That's not your favorite team or nothing. You're just trying to get at me, right?
Very much could be. We don't know.
It's true. It could be. Although if you're from Winnipeg, I'm gonna kind of put two and two together there. But there's some oddities. I thought I saw you rocking a Leafs jersey at some point in your Instagram life. Yeah, I saw.
Oh yeah, no, I have I'm across my room here. I actually have a rack of about 100 different hockey jerseys. So I could pull out anything at any time.
Right.
So,
and I find it funny that you chose that. For a lot of Leafs fans, you might be able to get them with something like that. But the problem is, sorry, my chat's doing the alarms and stuff. I don't even know if you can hear that.
No, I can't. Is there any way you could turn on your camera on Discord? Because I can't. I'm just kind of staring at a black screen right now. I don't know if that's going to screw up your stream.
Sorry. No, it shouldn't. Let's see if it does it. Anything. Let's go here. Share my screen. No. Turn off camera. Mine says it's on. I think because I'm streaming, I can't show you.
Yeah, it might just be a thing. I don't really want to. I mean, I guess I could open up the Twitch. I just don't want to screw up my.
If you have like a phone nearby, I recommend maybe having it out on there or something, so it's not going through your computer.
Yeah, I could do that. I have notes on my phone too. So if I'm looking off, my camera's in a weird location right now.
Oh, sure.
It's like behind my desk. So if I'm like looking off to the side or anything, it's because I'm looking at my phone. But
oh, dude, I'm old. I can barely handle being on the internet and talking at the same time. Like you're doing just fine. But I find it funny though that you chose that Bruins jersey just because. For a lot of Leafs fans, that might have worked. But for me, that's actually my beer league colors.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. Even better.
But my beer league colors, right? So the team that I've been on for years out in Brampton, right? That's the colors we rock. And we've been rocking it since before that whole, 2013 season even, too. So it's been a long time. So for me, the Bruins colors, even though we're supposed to hate them, they've always had a little bit of a soft spot for that jersey style. Because I'm like, yo, that's like mine. So...
yeah, that's fair.
So nice try.
I get it. Yeah, well, hey, I try to think creatively.
You played some hockey too. You said you played some hockey too growing up, right?
Yeah, I played for, I want to say 10 years. Obviously, I was never good enough because I'm sitting in my basement in a gaming chair talking about stats instead of playing in the NHL. So, but yeah, no, I played for I think it was 10 years. And then
right on.
Yeah, and now I'm doing. I've recently started actually running the analytics department for a major junior team in Manitoba. So
that's been
fun. Again, you actually said something. I don't want to get this out of the way now because a lot of people could look at that as me just kind of trying to take a higher ground in an argument.
Yeah, exactly. I know what you're going to say. Go for it.
Yeah, you said something really, I think, important at the end of your video, and it was that. Just because, even if you don't have a job in sports,
right,
it doesn't disqualify you from having an opinion or something along the lines of that. I don't know. It was a couple days ago I watched the video, but I think the whole appeal to authority that people go through, where it's like if somebody's in sports, they must know better, is really it doesn't make a lot of sense. I think there's a lot of really smart people that aren't in hockey. I mean,
yeah, of course,
and even to the point where. To just playing hockey. I mean, John Cooper played 1 year of club hockey before he started coaching. So I think there's a lot of value in that, and people that disregard that, are going to miss out on a lot. So
I definitely agree. And that's why, like, I'm glad you had that response of like what your hockey background was in your video, because a lot of people take that comment when I make it, hey, have you ever played before? They take that as some kind of like, I'm trying to take a higher ground. And I've tried to word it so many different ways that I've given up. It always sounds rude. So now I just get to the quickest way possible, which sounds the rudest, to be honest, right? Like, hey, have you ever played this game? And the amount of people that say no, right? And then you look at their opinions and you're like, well, that's why. Like, you don't understand that experience. So I'm not saying that it makes their opinion wrong, but it's good to know where their opinion's coming from. And that's why I appreciate that you said your hockey background, because I want people to know you're not some idiot that's just, look, there's a whole myth going around, right? That's always been like, say, like jocks versus math guys. You know what I mean? And I've liked both my whole life. So it doesn't make sense to me to be one or the other. So
no, I completely agree. And
yeah, I think a lot of the sports guys putting down analytics people because they don't understand calculators, and there's a lot of math people that are insulting athletes because they don't have a brain inside most of them. Like, you know what I mean? That's the stereotypes on both sides. Yeah, and I think especially like being able to work for a team and learn kind of the ins and outs of how like an analytics department. And when I say run an analytics department, I mean we had like 6 people on the staff and 2 of them were paid, right. One of them not being me, and like so I was the analytics department, but I got a really good relationship with the GM of the team, and we were able to work together really well and kind of bounce different ideas off each other, because he was a modern age kind of guy too, but we just didn't have the time to dive, or the staff really, to dive into everything like crazy. Right. So just finding a good balance between connecting game film to the numbers was really important, and it's something that neither side, who's really like hard on either eye test or analytics, can't do, because that means they have to concede a little bit, right? And that's why in my bio I have focus on getting it right, not being right, and that's something that I've tried to live by, because I feel like if as soon as you kind of get that mindset going, instead of the I'm just here to win an argument, right, that's when you actually start developing as somebody in this industry, and that's how you move forward and you learn more. So for sure. And you know what? Like, I have no problem being wrong on any of this. I mean, the reality is I'm a guy in my basement and I don't have the qualifications. I've done nothing in my life to prove that I deserve to speak out on what I think is right about hockey, right? In terms of that stuff, I've got nothing to go off of other than just what's in my heart. So, I mean, to overlook people just because they're not in the game and stuff like that, right, is grave. You know what I mean? You don't want to kill the evolution of the sport. So I don't know, man. Do you want to go for a question first or not? Like, I'll let you decide, because you've been so nice. I don't know if you got any questions or if there's some point you wanted to make first to kind of start things off. I mean, I do have notes. I came somewhat prepared. Yeah, because in a sense, right, I was the one that had the last word. So if you want to speak up on anything that maybe you saw in my response to your response, and now this is the third response, we're like an Eminem rap battle, man. We just keep going back and forth. We refuse to let it go. Yeah, I mean, it's generating traffic. I mean, I think I've gained like 10 followers in the last 2 days. So I don't know if that's from this or from I'm
other
glad
stuff,
that can happen for you.
And again, I think just to anybody out there who isn't following me currently, if anything I bring up here at any point you guys have questions about, feel free to send me a message. I mean, again, the whole thing is about trying to learn. At NBI hockey, or at NBI_hockey on Instagram for sure. Yeah, I also have Twitter. It's this. I think it's nothing but Iron 1 is my Twitter handle. That's linked. It's linked in my bio. I don't know. I got a whole bunch of stuff linked in my bio. I should probably clean that up. But yeah, I mean, like, I'm all for having discussions. I've been on the end of some rough confrontations as well, and I kind of just ignore it at this point. Right. But yeah, I mean, having discourse is how you learn. So again, if anybody wants to talk about any of this, like, feel free. Yeah, like, and for yourself, even as you were going along. So because you have a hockey background and stuff, has there ever been a moment like where you looked at what you were learning and said, I don't know if this is right, man? Like, have you ever looked at something and you, like, other than me, I'm an idiot, but I'm talking about like your actual learnings, right? Like your actual learnings as you're coming up in the world of analytics. Like, have you looked at anything and been a little suspicious of what you're seeing at least? Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the big things, especially with people getting into. I mean, when I first started getting into analytics, it was I don't know if you're familiar with the page on Instagram, but NHL Tape Talk. I don't think they really post anymore. I mean, maybe I see so many of them. Yeah. Yeah, he was one of the original, like, kind of, it was him and Talking Hockey that were kind of the big analytics pushers like 3 years ago.
Right.
He kind of got me onto it. It was actually my cousin that sent me the page and just to talk about hockey and stuff. Right. And it was just kind of like some of the stuff that he was talking about, right, with expected goals and WAR and all this other stuff. And it was kind of a lot of the opinions that were getting thrown out there were stuff I didn't agree with at the time. And then I kind of looked into it, right, and I started reading what went into everything, and then I realized that there's different models, right? Like, I mean, Evolving Hockey's expected goal model and Money Puck's expected goal model and Top Down Hockey's expected, like, they're all different. And to like, not extreme, but they're different enough that they show you different things, and just kind of learning the benefits to each one was important, and learning how to use each one. And I mean, now I'm blessed to be able to use like a private analytics site. The team that like the MJHL is partnered with Instat. This isn't a plug, by the way, but
sure, why not? Why not?
Ad read, but like Instat's really cool because it's used by teams in the NHL as well. Like the Tampa Bay Lightning are partnered with Instat as well. But one of the cool things about it is that they have like all their stats, and then you can click on each one. Like you can click on like a player's, like you can go to Steven Stamkos's expected goals, like all his numbers, whatever. You click on his expected goals, and it pulls up like a 40 clip highlight reel of every single play that contributed to that number. And you can see, like, it shows you a shot map of like how much each shot's weighted for, and you can kind of figure it out yourself, right? So if there's a number you disagree with, you can go into the film and be like, well, was that actually a good scoring chance or not?
Ooh, dude,
it's really fun to do, and it's kind of been I've lived on that website for the last couple months, so. Unfortunately, I don't know if I can use any of that data on my page because obviously I'm in it as a staff member, not a media member. So it's kind of, I don't want to get my privileges revoked. That's why I haven't used any of the Instat numbers on Instagram. But it's really cool.
That sounds awesome, dude. That sounds awesome. And like that's what I'm saying is a lot of people interpret the way I come at things as like I'm trying to say I'm better than advanced analytics. And the reality is I'm inspired by advanced analytics. I think there is really something to this. I really think that there are so many things that can be tracked, especially with computers being what they are, that like there's no excuse not to have even more points of data and even more points of data. I really do believe it, right? So I like to see where it's developing. I'm really fascinated by what the work is that people like yourself are putting into the game. The more we understand, the more we're prepared. I still think this is a thinking man's game above all else. You know what I mean? I think in hockey, you can get away with a lot less physical talent if you've got a lot more mental talent, right? Making ourselves aware of the game and figuring out what's best for it. Maybe some of these strategies need to be changed over the years, or maybe the way we appreciate what a player can do needs to change over the years. So I really, really don't mean to disrespect anybody in the worlds of analytics. I want to join it, man. That's what it comes down to. I want to join it, and I want to know why you hate plus minus. All right.
All right. So yeah, I guess we can.
People have been waiting long enough. It's time I get the dirt out of you right now. Why do you hate us? Why do you hate us so much?
My biggest thing, obviously, and I talked about it in the video, was just the lack of any kind of like tangible information from it. I guess is the best word. It's too vague of its stat to actually like use in player evaluation. I think it could be, and I want to. The analytics community is about to kill me. But one of the things that we did, and I'm gonna reference my experience here,
sure,
a little bit because I think it's important. But one of the things that we did, we actually used plus minus to a very small extent with the team that I was on. I guess it's the Winnipeg Freeze of the MJHL, if you guys care.
Nice.
Expansion team, so we're not very good right now, but we're getting there. But one of the things that we do, one of the things that we do is after each game, because again we were such a small staff and it was hard to like if we're going to dedicate an hour to each player, there just wasn't enough time in the day, especially with people not getting paid to be there. It just wasn't like I'm not going to I can't spend 12 hours for free like working, right?
I know, right?
Yeah, I wish I could. Like, it's awesome, but like, I can't.
It's what we're trying to do, right?
Yeah,
but the goal.
Well, so one of the things that we do is after each game, we'd look at everybody's plus minus first, and we'd say everybody who had a plus, it was just kind of like, all right, we don't have time to worry about you, so we're just going to assume that what you did was fine. Right. And we're only going to focus on the players that were minuses, and we're actually going to dive into their tape and see if there's anything they could have changed in their game. And sometimes, a lot of the times, it wasn't. It was like, they were just in a bad situation at the wrong time, whatever. Right. But we just didn't have the time to dive into all 20 players on the ice and spend an hour on each one, especially if we had a game like in the next day or two. Like it wasn't feasible. And again, when you have a staff of 30 people, it's easy enough to do that. But
right.
2, it's it's not going to happen. So we use plus minus in that way to knowing like full well that we probably were missing a lot in those positive players that we could fix as well. But right. it was a simple way to kind of focus in on what could be the key issues in that specific game. But other than that, that was about the extent of what we used it for, at least in that experience. And I think I'd encourage smaller teams to do that, actually, because it really helped develop, especially a lot of our like bottom 6 players, right. especially were helped by that, and we saw improvement from them. So that was good.
Yeah, and you're saying, so I know, because I don't want to get what you're saying wrong, and I'm very slow, so sometimes I'll have to repeat what you say. I apologize, right? But
yeah, that was a long tangent. Yeah, so
no, it's okay. I like it. I don't want to ruin the flow, but you're saying that like the reason why you have a personal attachment to what's going on with what I'm saying is you've used it, you've looked at it, yes. and you weren't finding what you were hoping to find, so it ended up wasting your time in the long run, right?
It's not so much that it's not so much that we didn't find what we were looking for. It's that we missed a lot. If we were only evaluating players like first based on like their plus minus, we'd miss a lot of the context in what each player brought. And there was too many plays that were really good or really bad by players that were bailed out by the fact they didn't get a plus or a minus on a play.
Right.
And we wouldn't be able to correct that if we didn't catch it. And there was some cases where a player was like a +2 or +3 in a game, and they had 5 or 6 awful plays that just didn't end up in the back of the net.
Right.
So we caught it because like we're all watching the game. But it's something that if we would have just like looked at all the minus players and just ignored the plus guys, it would have been something that we would have missed and we wouldn't have been able to correct. So
why wouldn't you, sorry to interrupt, but why wouldn't you want to look at the plus plays too so that you can figure out what to teach the guys with the minuses?
I guess I should have explained that a bit more. Like we didn't, at least from like a what to fix standpoint.
Yeah,
we didn't have the time to spend breaking down because like to break down a player, like I think a lot of people don't understand this, and I'm not saying that you don't. I just think as a general consensus, like the eye test community, right? They think like you can watch a game once and catch everything. Right. You can't. We'd spend like literally an hour on every player, like watching their film. It was great. I'd go there with our GM. We'd get coffees and we'd sit in his locker room / office and just watch a single player's highlights for an hour and break down their film. And doing that for all 20 players just wasn't like, it's just impossible to do in a day.
Yeah, no, I hear you for sure. And
so,
the thing is,
so we decided as a team that it would be better to fix the mistakes than kind of focus on the positives, I guess is the way to put it, which sounds like the positives don't matter as much, but it was just kind of in the sense of trying to make the team overall better. We tried to lift explain to the players who didn't do stuff well why they weren't succeeding. And I mean, we're dealing with like guys a step below the CHL here too, so it's not like they don't know how to play hockey. Sure, yeah, exactly. You're not talking about no slouches here. Yeah, so I think that was kind of part of the reason why we decided to go that way, because like if you do something good on the ice, you're probably gonna know like, hey, that was I made a good play. Yeah, I mean, maybe, but like when we're talking about those times where a guy can screw up 3 or 4 times and still come away with a plus or still come away with a goal even. It happens. I don't know. I think there's something to the coaching mentality of just trying to keep players in a positive headspace. So like, oh yeah, no, I mean, I'm not saying we didn't just rag on the players and stuff too, but right. But what I'm saying is like, it's okay to kind of like call them out on it in a fun way though, right? You know what I mean? So it's like I don't know. I think by ignoring those pluses, from a coaching standpoint, I would have wanted to go back in and actually find out how it went right. And if it's silly and doesn't really help teach strategy at all because it was a pure fluke, then we can all kind of like have a lighthearted moment together. I think I don't know, from teaching kids for the little bit that I have a couple times in different sports and stuff, soccer and hockey,
so many coaches have this tendency to show them the negative first, right? They go, okay, now when you're out there, you might want to do this, and they show them a mistake. Now, it doesn't matter what sport, you know what I mean? Whether you're kicking a ball, swinging a bat, whatever, they'll show them a mistake first because that's what the kid is more likely to do. And then they show them what they want them to do, right? They show them the positive afterwards. And I find, man, that it's so hard because, like, there's a lot of kids nowadays that, like, they see the negative, and then that's the thing, that their attention span's short. They saw you do the negative, and even though in warm-up you didn't see them do the negative thing at all, now it's like they've learned it from you because you showed it to them first. So it's I don't know.
Yeah,
like I'm getting very metaphysical, and I know that, like, when we're talking data, I shouldn't do that, but I do have to think about these things. There's a psychology to sports as well, too, right?
Oh, I know, and I mean, I'm a psych minor. Like, I get it. Like, the mental game is important. Yeah, though I 100%. Like, I agree. And I didn't want to. I didn't really want to make it sound like we only brought up the negative stuff. That was just like. It was just kind of what we had to make a choice on what to focus on.
For sure. But if anyone had brought it up to you in the room, like at the time, do you think you could have you think it would be possible that you might have been convinced to also do it that way? If like whoever's giving you orders, right? You would have done it, right? It's not a crazy thought to necessarily do it.
No, I think so. I mean, and again, in an ideal world, we would have covered it. We would have been able to cover everything. But
right, and that's the thing is I'm bringing these points up. I'm bringing these points up because I want to show people that, like, you actually understand what I'm saying. A lot of times, it's not even necessarily that you don't understand it, so therefore you don't agree. A lot of this stuff you do understand what my point of view is, and I'm trying to get you to make that clear.
For sure,
because I know you know it, right? So you're not coming at this like some guy that doesn't want to hear what I have to say. So I appreciate that,
Yeah, no, 100%. And again, I mean, it's hard to convey. I think a lot of what happened was we got lost in translation in our videos. By the way, if anybody gets that reference, you win. But yeah, I think a lot of it was just that we didn't. So there was communication barriers in just call and response kind of thing.
Yeah, that's just it doesn't work so well, but it's a start, and at least we got here with it, right?
Yeah, no, exactly.
Now, maybe I should tell you before we go on, maybe I should tell you kind of what my thought process was going into why I even came up with this silliness, right? Why I'm
I kind of that was going to be my first question too, is just kind of like how would you like practically apply this, I guess would be kind of the thing. But let's not even get to that. Let's just figure out what the goal is that I'm trying to achieve with a new stat. It doesn't even have to be this one, but like what I want to see achieved, right? Sure.
So my headspace was, look at the name itself. Technically, we're using plus minus, but the stat, you know what I mean, when I mess with it a little bit, which, again, we debate on that too, is the intangibility rating. Because I feel like for now, hey, there we go. Someone's joining along for the ride here with us, bud. Puck Analysis 323. I don't know if you know him, but Georgie's here for us, all right?
Yeah. He's beating me in fantasy this week, or last couple weeks ago.
Sorry, what was that?
He beat me in fantasy a couple weeks ago, I think. So, yeah.
All right. Well, let's show him one thing or two, eh? No. But yeah, my whole point was that I know there's so many points of data that for now, the eye and the computers can't catch it all because we're not even sure what relates to a goal in the end, right? Like there's things that happen on the ice that are so intangible. We talk about the word intangible all the time. We talk about guys that have, heart, we say, or they can really grind and stuff. And it's like, we all know it. We see it with our eyes. We interpret it. I could tell you a player that does that, and you imagine in your head how they play, and you're probably going to be right? There's a hockey lingo that we're using to describe things. And it's very real. It's not calculated because we don't know how to do that yet, but it's real. So maybe if we can bypass the how we're succeeding first and get straight to, wait a minute. Forget money, forget status, whatever. Who is succeeding right now? Like who is having above expectations of themselves, of their position, whatever. Let's find them and figure out if any of those pieces fit our team. Now, not all will, but that's up for you to decide. At least you know that these guys have that we would call it, heart, that we would call that, that passion or something, that intangible factor that seems to cause certain guys success, even though they might not be the most elite players in the world. So that's my goal with this. Is there any thoughts off the top of your head that might go to something like that kind of idea or concept? Is there somebody that we're missing perhaps out there that's got theories about this stuff?
I think what I'll do is I'll dive into that definition in a bit. I kind of want to just let you keep going here.
Okay, cool.
and because I have a couple things I want to bring up, but I want to see if you cover it first.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, you can continue into your.
So that's the thought process of where I'm at, right?
Okay.
That's the thought process.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Yeah, okay.
Now, how it started with this particular decision to go down this road, purely for the laughs.
Fair
and
enough.
I do not apologize for it. Purely for the laughs.
Honestly,
However,
you got a lot of engagement on it, so I mean, I respect it.
I think I said it once in a joke, like as a joke on a Twitch stream or something like that, and like somebody lost their mind. And there's a certain response you get when you know that you just kind of like rocked someone's world for a second. You might have rocked it with nonsense. Don't get me wrong. It doesn't necessarily mean it's true, right? But when someone's world's been rocked, there's a certain level of angry that they get instantly. That you're like, I think I'm on to something here, right? Like, this is fun. But
I think I can relate to that. I had a post, like a series that I did over the summer, and it was a really cool idea, but it blew up in my face. And it was I decided that I wanted to get a whole bunch of pages to rank their top 100 players of the league for last season. And I sent out applications like 20 pages, and it's a task to rank 100 players.
Sure, yeah.
I get it.
I wouldn't want to do it.
Yeah, so I got like 6 or 7 responses in total. And the list that was put together was awful, because like if one guy has somebody in the 40s, like they're gonna jump up like crazy, just because like percentages, right? So I think it's still a joke in all my comments, but I think like Nico Sturm ended up ranked ahead of like Mark Scheifele.
Right, Mark Scheifele.
Yeah, it was great. It was hilarious. And I mean, but I think I gained literally like 300 followers from that, because it got shared everywhere. And it was hilarious.
You put out, if you're putting out a vibe or a concept or an idea, I mean, sometimes it's not always going to land. But just getting people
for the record, I don't think Nico Sturm is better than Mark Scheifele. I want to point that out. That was not my opinion.
Okay, so that brings up an interesting word, if you don't mind just getting sidetracked here for a second. You said that so-and-so is better than so-and-so. Okay, so that's a concept I'm trying to do away with in terms of rating players now. I know it sounds crazy, because we do need to evaluate pure raw physical talent, right? A guy like McDavid is by far like the most physically skilled hockey player in the league to me that exists.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? So people say he's better than so-and-so. Well, that is true, and on that level of success, that way of rating how a player is doing. But we all know in today's world, you cannot have a team full of McDavids. So kind of like what you were trying to speak to before, of trying to find, I really believe that once you have a core group of just about any type core, right? You got subs going off. Oh man, thanks everybody. Once you find that core to build around, then it really matters that you need to be finding value out of those third and fourth liners, like you're saying, right? Find those players that you can get to fill voids for a season or two, and that's it. You know, it's constant rotating cast, so you need to be ahead of the trends and stuff, right?
Yeah, just kind of speak on that. By better, I didn't mean like just in raw talent. I think that's my bad.
No, you didn't. I don't even say you said it like that, but it just made me think of it. So I apologize. Yeah.
No, I agree, and and I think everybody in this chat, whether they're an analytics user or not, will completely agree with what you just said. And I think the goal of modern sports analytics is to try to go past just the raw talent as well.
Yep.
And I mean, you can see that in guys like even Patrick Kane, who are slandered in the analytics community because he doesn't play defense. But I mean, talent-wise, like Patrick Kane's like he's probably one of the most five talented players to like ever play the game. Like he's insane.
Oh man, he's up there for sure.
But his
sweeter
impact,
hands than Patty Kane. That's all I'm saying. Sweeter hands.
Well, maybe Pavel Datsuk, but
good call. I don't know now. Oh, good call. No, I don't know. It's a good one. Chat, let us know.
But yeah, I mean, nobody's arguing how talented he is as a player, but it's more about his impact overall in the game, and I think that's what the goal of analytics is. And that's obviously the goal of what you're trying to do as well. Right. Is to cut through the talent and find actually like the impact. So I think we're on the same page there.
You're right. So we actually, that's exactly what I'm saying, is that like, our goals are the same in the end. And that's what I really find fascinating about these conversations. We're fighting for the same thing. And I would rather be wrong and have it be discovered by you than be right, like just be so stuck in what I think is right, that I ignore you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd rather be on your team when you finally crack the bubble faster than me of like how to solve hockey, right? I'd rather be like in with you because we've been having fun talking about it, then like completely write you off as an idiot and not talk about it with you. So
no, exactly. I feel the same way. Yeah, and that's why I engaged with this in the first place. So
yes. Okay, so now you go through all the different numbers and everything. Now, one thing I did find a little bit unfair about a lot of people that go against me on this. Okay, it's not just yourself; it's a lot of discussions. Is as soon as I say I've got a stat to help point to success better than any other stat, the argument comes in, but we have a stat for that, and then we have a stat for that, and then we have a stat for that. So what you're actually doing is giving me 5 to 6 to 7 different stats, or you're even giving me stats that are made up of other stats, so they're like a culmination of stats, and you're putting that against my 1. Now, to be fair, I don't think that is fair, right? Like a plus minus, we're talking about as a standalone fact, there's a standalone stat that you can use compared to any other one stat, is what I would say is a fair discussion. Right? And I don't think, I think you can admit here, you might not even say that plus minus is it. That might be trash as well too. But right now, we all can agree that there's not one stat definitively that we can say is like the stat to check to see who's better. Obviously, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and this is something that a lot of people also might not know, right. Is private analytics sites don't even bother with GAR models. Like Instat does not have their own goals of replacement model.
Well, they don't even show you any formulas, do they, though? Really? They tell you a brief description of what's going on, but a lot of these sites don't even tell you the exact way they're calculating things. Am I wrong?
A lot of the public ones do. You can actually access, I think up until recently, because it was a legal thing, right. Evolving Hockey actually had their entire code listed on their website. Like all these sites are based on, like, it's like they're not doing it by hand, right? Like this is all like they're coding all this stuff. Right. And I think up until recently, Evolving Hockey had their entire script on their website so people could look at it. I don't know. I think Top Down Hockey did something similar. I'm not sure about the other ones. I don't know how to code, so it doesn't. Yeah,
neither. Well, I learned a little bit. I'm still in the process of trying to finish that.
Yeah, so I was working on it this summer, and I just didn't have the time. But yeah, I mean, like you can find the base formulas out there, if you really wanted to. They're just not. I mean, like. Evolving Hockey is like, I think, the best site for finding references to things. They have a whole page full of references, and right. I mean, like the articles they link to are really, really boring and really, really long, and I don't recommend reading them unless you really care. But they are there. Like you can find formulas and everything in there. They might just be like tied up within the examples of code they give you, but they are, because they're more complicated than just adding a couple numbers together.
Sure, and I'm well aware of that, you know what I mean? But I'm also familiar with mathematical formulas, and I am also familiar with computer code and stuff like that. Like I'm not a genius or nothing, but I've been around the block a couple times, okay? And anytime I was looking into it before, these are the kind of things I would come across, okay? So, again, I apologize if I haven't gone to the coolest sites. I'm trying to get into it, right? I'm like you, I want to learn, only I'm way far behind because I'm old and stupid, but we'll get to that later, right? But the things I found were the things that caused me to doubt the way stuff was being calculated was things like the report that was published about when to pull your goalie. I don't know if you've seen that. You probably have. You probably know better than I do.
It rings a bell, yeah. I think.
Right. They had it say that, like, you should pull with a single, I think it's with a single goal down, you should pull your goalie with like 3 minutes left. If you're down by 2 goals, it should be 6 minutes left in the third until you score again. So if you got within 1 after the 6 minutes, but it's before the 3 minutes, then you put your goalie back in, and then it hits 3 minutes, and then you take your goalie back out. So basically, 3 minutes a goal, right? Except for when you're down 3 goals, you should pull your goalie with 2 minutes left in the second period if you're down by 3 goals. And that right there said to me, and this was published, this went crazy, and then all of a sudden you started seeing guys like Patrick Waugh pulling his goalie with 6 minutes left and stuff, and you know what I mean? Like it kind of increased the time a little bit, right? Not as much as they said it should be, but goalies have been pushing the limits of when to pull the goalies now, and it's based on this report that you can all go check out. And you know what I mean? The theory is they based all their math off of the concept that in the standings, it is just as bad to lose like 2-1 than it is 9-1. Because in the standings, you get a point for a win, you know what I mean? Or you get nothing for the loss. It's just a loss. That's it.
Yeah.
So you might as well go for it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that is completely crazy. And I'm telling you right now, because it is better to lose 2-1. And the reason why it is because of the concept of at any moment, a puck can go your way. As soon as you write yourself off and say at 2-1, I'm done, like that's it, right? Then you're going to lose. It's only a matter of time before you give up that goal. It's not, you need to cut it as close as possible. We all agree that, like, in hockey, there's times where you need to pull your goalie, especially facing elimination, right? You're facing elimination in the playoffs. Yeah, you might pull your goalie with 6 minutes left if you're down by 3 goals. I get that. But if we're talking about trying to stay in the game, right, get as many points as you can in the season, it is far better to lose by 1 than to lose by 5. Because it meant that any type of puck luck could have gone your way. But if you blew it because you pull your goalie way too soon, then no, that's not a good coaching move. And I don't care what any report says about it. Like, that's just hockey knowledge. And I don't think I'm crazy for saying so. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd like to see. I think the point that you're trying to get to is that it's better to be down 2-1 with like 20 seconds left in the game because it gives you a chance to win. Like, it's not so much losing by a goal, because like in this, like, from a technical standpoint, like, it is the same, but it's about being
from a standings point. I get that point of view. Yeah, you know what I mean. In the standings, like, for points.
Yeah, it's about being close to the end of the game. So I get that. And there was a study done. I forget who it was by, but it was tracking the percentage of when teams pull their goalies, what's the success rate, and your chance of scoring goes up. I think it's like 18%. With less than a minute to go and an empty net. But the odds of the other team scoring at all is like 40%. So you're basically like you're tanking your chances of letting in a goal, but you're also boosting your offensive production. But yeah, I mean, it does lead a lot of the times to, I mean, obviously almost half the time that you pull your goalie, it leads to a goal against. So
right.
It's kind of I'd like to see the sources behind that.
Right.
That article.
Again, to me, it's not even about the math part of that. It's about the coaching style of that, right? What you're doing, though, right, is you're saying to your players, you can't get any better right now. We're down 2-1. It's 4 minutes left or whatever, or 3 minutes left, okay? You're not getting any better. So I have no choice but to pull this goalie. When for 2 minutes, you could be trying to figure out some way, whether you mix it the lineup or you figure out who you got to yell at or who you got to encourage or whatever. Figure out a way to get the boys to just play 10% better or just play 30% better. It's in them still. You got to believe in them. You know what I mean? And I think that there's untapped talent that you're just writing off by, not you, again, that the person is writing it off when they say, 3 minutes, that's it. That's mathematically optimizes your best chance. You don't know if the team that's down is going to start playing better. That can happen, right?
Yeah, I'd like to, like, I don't have the article in front of me, so it's hard to see what their reasoning behind everything was, because I'm assuming that they reference some kind of like more than just the numbers say that it supports it. So it's something that I'll look into for sure.
Well, basically the whole the math part of it, okay, the math part of it kicks in after they make that decision. So they make the decision of, we're going to prove that it's statistically just as, like, I'm not even going to prove. We're going to justify how quickly you need to pull your goalie on the concept that 1 point is 1 point, you know what I mean? Or like a loss is a loss, 2 points is 2 points. So it doesn't matter if you lose or not, right? It doesn't matter goal differential. If you lose, you lose. And that's what I'm saying, is that is a fundamentally flawed part of their math. Because now all they're doing is they're taking everything they can mathematically and trying to optimize your chance of scoring rather than optimize your chance of defending. I think that a lot of the statistic stuff does not weigh heavily enough on defense. Maybe instead of trying to score with 3 minutes left, what they really needed to do was shut down momentum defensively. And we don't know, because we don't know the example of, each given team. And I know that's a hypothetical. Maybe I shouldn't use that in these kind of debates, but I have to. Because in sports, I think you're better off knowing when you can be the 2% of people that beat the odds. If we can figure out a way to recognize when it's 98% chance of failure, well, there was 2% that got through. What helped them get through? You know what I mean? So
yeah, I think it depends. Again, I think a lot of it depends on situations. I mean, I'd like to see where they get the idea where you should pull your goalie with 2 minutes left in the second period. That seems like ridiculous.
Well, they're optimizing so they had all the math. I'll just get briefly into it. It was like the average how long it takes to score a goal in the NHL across all goals since their study started, right? Like they're averaging up all the goals over 60 minutes. You know what I mean? Just figure out how many goals are scored per game, per shift, literally per second if they want. You know what I mean? Like they got it down to a formula. So they're optimizing how long you can have your goalie pull out before it's likely that they will score against you, right? And they're calculating that depending on all the other 6-on-4 situations, 6-on-3 situations. Like if the one team has got penalties, a single or a double penalty, 6-on-5 situations, like they do all that, right? So you know better than a lot of people all the different math they probably use to figure that out. But it's all still, to me, based on a flawed theory, and that's the problem I find with some of these analytics. Like, do you come across this at all? Do you disagree with like how they're even coming up with where to start from the math?
I feel like it depends. Like, I mean, there's so many different moving parts to every stat, right? I feel like some models, for instance, I have more issue with than others. Like, I mean, it's I've talked about it before that I think the top-down hockey goals above replacement model focuses too heavily on finishing ability for players, which doesn't which can lead to players who go on like quote-unquote shooting benders getting unnecessarily like overly rated. Right. And that's something they've talked about themselves to the point where they actually have to adjust it like post the math going in, like they have to adjust it individually for each player, and I think that's kind of an issue. And it's one of the reasons why I don't use that model a whole lot. But I think for the most, I mean, we're talking about, and I think that this is important, I think we're talking about data that's been like peer reviewed and like proven over large sample size to have some kind of effectiveness.
Absolutely.
In improving things. And it was a study that I did myself since the bubble in 2020 all the way through last season. And I went through and I matched what a team's expected goal percentage was during a game. And if they were leading in expected goals at the end of the game, did they win? And I basically created like a winning percentage for teams that led in expected goals, which again, I'm using one stat. I don't recommend using one stat. And that's one of the reasons why private analytics models don't have like a single overall stat, because it doesn't actually help when teams are making individual decisions. We can get into that later. But the point is, don't use one stat. Anyway, what I found is that teams that led, and this is again across the entire NHL, that teams that led in expected goals at the end of the game won the game like 68% of the time. And that's over like a 600-700 game sample, I guess, from last year's season and the bubble. I don't know. I can't remember exactly what the number was. But if you compare that to, I think I have it written down here. I forget who did this study. Somebody did a study on the luck versus skill.
Good. Yeah.
Differential in sports. The book is called The Success Equation by Michael Mobison. There's a video on YouTube about it too. I think I have that book somewhere. But regardless, he found that hockey not only was the most luck-based in results out of the 5 team sports, it was about 50-50 any given game.
It's impossible to bet on. Is that the report you're talking about, where he was talking about how it's impossible to bet on?
I think that was part of it, yeah. And I mean, you see that in the Vegas odds too. I mean, how many times do you see a team like over like 54% like rate to win, like in Vegas odds? Like, it doesn't happen. But anyway, yeah, so it said like any given day you can pick 2 teams out of a hat, and it's a 50-50 shot basically that one of them's going to win. So the idea of using expected goals specifically to help boost your chances is that winning percentage goes from 50-50 on any given night to somewhere closer to 70 if you can create a style that gears itself towards expected goals most of the time. And again, like, individual players are different. I love when people bring up the Alex Ovechkin example to discredit expected goals, because it's like, yeah, that's crazy. The greatest goal scorer of all time can score from anywhere on the ice. That's, it's wild. But at the same time, this year specifically, in the first 22 games, he had 19 goals without Nicholas Backstrom, who was generating a lot of that high danger offense. Ovechkin this year specifically generated a lot of that high danger offense himself, and was almost scoring a goal a game from higher danger areas than the top of the circle. So as he got into better scoring positions by what the model says, his goal rate went up, even though it's already crazy. So I think it depends on the player. I mean, a guy like that, again, it's an outlier and he can score from anywhere. Like,
no, but I don't think that's an outlier necessarily. Like, I think it's like you're kind of describing. The majority of his actual effort still happens within the same region that a lot of other players do. It's no secret, guys. Anybody watching this, we all get it that like shots from the slot are high danger shots. Shots from the slot that come from a pass are obviously even more dangerous than that. That's like pretty much ideal. Other than like, I mean, they get into shot angles, and I get that, and speed and velocity and stuff like that. Like I know they have a lot more points of data than the ones we just throw around. But that's the point, is they've got it mapped out for a reason. This is stuff that we've always known in hockey. We just didn't have math to prove it, and that's what I really like about analytics. Is in a lot of ways, you're going back and you're mathematically proving what old hockey guys from the 50s have been saying for years, that like the casual fan doesn't even still understand this stuff. You know what I mean? The strategies of getting to the net, creating a pass or two, spreading a goalie across the crease. We've been saying this in hockey families for years. Now you guys are actually coming in with real math to show like, yeah, like that's legit. There's a danger spot, and if you're getting more chances from there, you're going to win more games than not. Like I'm with expected goals on that concept. That's pretty much what they're going for, right? To show that.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And I mean, I
love that about it.
I think the other thing too is that like on its own, expected goals is flawed in the fact that it doesn't discuss at all whether or not the player is actually able to finish. Like a player can generate as many expected goals as he wants, but if he's throwing like muffins at the net, they're never going to go in.
Right.
So I like, and that's why you need you need complementary stats to see if a player's actually finishing.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And one that I would try and you know what I would want to know is was there a better option available that he said no to take his expected goal? You know what I mean? Like it may have been a high danger opportunity. But like I would want to know as a coach, was there a better one? Was there a backdoor pass that was wide open that he got selfish and tunnel visioned, or not selfish, but you know what I mean? Like just focused on himself because he's trapped in the moment and he just fires it. Like, you know what I mean? As much as it's like, oh, wow, he got a good shot. We might have had a goal if he made a better shot or a better pass, sorry. And I don't think they tracked that as well as they could.
I think one of the reasons why that isn't tracked is because it comes down to more like there's no quantifiable way that you can measure whether or not a player made a bad.
It's opinion. We're talking about opinion on this stuff.
I think that's where connecting the stats to the film is important. And again, like private analytics models do this really well, and I get why, like, obviously public analytics models don't have the NHL license, so they can't throw video clips on their websites. But like a website like Instat, for like when we were using Instat, if a player had a really high expected goal rate and they have like 2 goals on the season,
right,
then we could look through those specific clips and we could actually see, hey, maybe you should have done this instead of that, and it becomes a lot more of a process. Like you can spend hours working on one player's game from a single game tape and try to find all these little things. And I think that's where you have to find the balance between the data pointing out situations and then you using the film to kind of either encourage or correct those. And I mean, Brady Kitchuk's a really famous example, especially in
Bruins
in
Analytics
public.
just came through with Brady Kitchuk as well at the same time. You guys, like you said it just as he said it in the chat.
Yeah.
It was awesome. Brady Kitchuk.
Brady Kitchuk's a good example of this because he's notorious for having really, really high expected goals numbers. But if you actually watch his tape, a lot, and this is because we don't have puck tracking right now publicly, and we don't have goalie position tracking, and those are two things that I think would change the game again. Very similar to how the post-lockout NHL changed by offering RTSS data and actually tracking in-game events. But Brady Kitchuk is really famous because he gets really high expected goals numbers, but a lot of his shots are literally just like right in front of the net, slamming the puck against the goalie's pads. And that's never going to go in. Right. Like that's an idiot move, even though it might be considered an expected goal. So again, that's where you have to have like the film to back up whatever like the numbers say, right? And you can figure that out. And again, like players like that isn't every single player all the time. That's just very specifically Brady Kitchuk's style of play, is being right in front of the net and just hacking at rebounds. So it's not like that's happening to every single player's numbers, but you have to kind of know the strengths and this is what comes down to knowing the strengths and weaknesses of each model, right? Because somebody like there's people out there already trying to account for that. I think that's one of the things top-down hockey's been trying to do. Although I just ragged on their model a second ago. It's something that they're trying to account for, but it's just it's almost impossible to do without having goalie positioning tracking, basically, because you don't know where the goalie is on any shot just by looking at the numbers.
And I would want to know that for sure, absolutely. But even to go back to Brady Kitchuk there for a second, so I agreed with you that was a bonehead move for him to keep doing, right? Like slam it into the pads. But the thing is, that's an opinion on myself even too. That's not really a fact, because how many times does other people score after he's whacked at it 2 or 3 or 4 times? Or how many times has those weak shots, those weak expected goals, if you will, been more of like a jab to someone else's final blow? You know what I mean? Like there's no way to really calculate how much of an impact those weak, opportunity after opportunity attempts are really having on the goaltender, because they do have to move still, or you know what I mean. They do have to mentally, and I think, be stressed by it, or you know what I mean. So, like, I would say the same thing about Brady Kitchuk as you there. So I don't want to sound like I'm disagreeing with your point of view, but at the same time, like I'm trying to acknowledge that even in my own self, that's kind of an opinion, isn't it? Like we're not really gauging 3, 4, 5 plays behind necessarily. There is a cutoff point to when a goal happens where people are like, okay, everything beyond this point was really kind of irrelevant. But maybe not.
I think in the fact of it being like inflating the stat is I think what I was trying to get at. Less so of it being a bad decision necessarily, because obviously, like, I mean, his style of play is working. He's a really good hockey player.
That's debatable.
But I think it just yeah, I mean, fair enough. I think he's overrated, but you know, that's the conversation for another day. But it's just more in the fact that like it inflates his expected goals numbers, where it makes him look like he's generating, like every one of his shots is generating more high danger opportunity than they should be. And although yes, it can, you know, get at a goalie, and you know, obviously being in a goalie's face like that is going to, you know, irritate them to some extent.
It can mess with them mentally, right?
For sure. But I think it's just like every one of those individual shots doesn't have as high of a percentage to go in as the model suggests, is what I'm trying to say. I definitely
agree with that. Yeah, I can understand why even too. That's a fair assessment if we're trying to rate the quality of the shot itself.
Yeah, totally. And again, this is why connecting it to the film is important. And I understand for a lot of people who, again, don't have access to $2,000 analytics models, it's really hard to do that, because you can't, like, unless you're going to watch the entire game just for that one moment, it's really hard to kind of connect those two. Right. And it's something that I'm really happy I can actually like do.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, and these are things that NHL teams will, and I mean, who knows how NHL teams are accounting for that, because like everybody has to know that to some extent if you have any kind of like competent video people. So it'd be interesting to see how teams are accounting for that in their own system, because I mean, every team has their own kind of like, they all have their own analytics departments depending on how much they spend, but every team to some extent has one, and it'd be interesting to see kind of how
they kind of have to have their own, right? Because like if it's exactly the same as everybody else's, if they're all going off of some central database, like you know what I mean, they're all going to have the same team, and then no one's going to have the edge. It's all about trying to find an edge, right? So like each team's got their own department with their own math that they're working on that we'll never even hear about.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you know, you see like there's names for guys that created some of the first like expected goals models and WAR models that are working in NHL front offices now, which is, it's cool to see that kind of evolution. But I mean, these are guys that nobody's, and like, and even then, like, I mean, how many of these guys are actually going to get looks at more important front office jobs than running an analytics department? And I think we're not there yet in the NHL. And I think the team that kind of figures that out is going to like be really good. Yeah, I mean, you're seeing some guys, Steve Yzerman and Joe Sakic are kind of getting there too, but they didn't get those jobs because they're analytics guys. They got those jobs because they're Steve Yzerman and Joe Sakic.
Right, absolutely. But I think that it's kind of supporting what you're saying, that it's evolving in the sense that these guys like Shanahan and Sakic and Yzerman and stuff, they now know they have to have the math guys too, though, right? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They may not be as good with it as Dubas himself, but they've got teams made up of people that are, because they know now how important finding this information is. And I really do still support it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm all for this analytics stuff, and I hate the fact that a lot of people think I'm not. That I think that I'm trying to look down on it. I'm not that jock. I promise you from here on out, any future discussions, I am not that jock. All right, I'm all for figuring out science and figuring out numbers and stuff like that. I just think that hockey is so pure and innocent that a lot of times we see things that we haven't figured out how to measure yet. And that's really where all this is coming from. So to go back to me saying as a joke, it's plus minus, right? Like that is how it started as a joke. But the thing is, the more I looked at it, it's like that movie 23 where now I'm seeing it everywhere. You know what I mean? And, the more I looked into it, the more I'm thinking, you know what? Like, what if this is the consciousness of hockey rather than the skill? I get it. It's never going to find me the next McDavid, right? I mean, it might. But it also is not going to, that'd be a sheer fluke. I'm not pinning that on a plus minus based theory. But at the same time, like, if you could find one number to find that success quickly, and that even depends on what we mean by the word success. But if you could find success quicker than everybody else, isn't that worth looking into? And sometimes that might mean that we have to find it before we even understand it. And that's kind of the theory that, like, you know what I mean? It became like, if any stat was going to do that, it's got to be plus minus. Because, like, if a guy ate well that day, he might have an awesome game. But he might lose 5-0 if he had Swiss Chalet. You know what I mean? Like an intangible, like eating something before a game could affect the outcome of a game. Like, it could be all that guy's fault in the end. You know what I mean? And there's no way to track that except for, did they get pluses or did they get minuses? Like, it was ridiculous, and I know it's ridiculous. But it's kind of fun to think of it as, like, more of a metaphor or more of, like, just a concept rather than a stat. I don't know.
I think the interesting thing that you said there is to find it before anybody else.
Yes.
And it's funny. I saw that you posted a video about Alex Kerfoot today. I didn't. It was, again, just a little video clip. So, like, I know. You're just trying to get whatever I put out. Yeah. This isn't like a baiting question. I mean, it kind of is, but I'm not trying to bait you in anything.
No, it's cool. It's cool. Let's do it, man. I'm being too nice to you right now. Like, we're having such a good time. I'm not beefing enough. So yeah, bring it out. Whatever you got. Let's go.
So, like, were you trying to say that, like, what was kind of, I guess, what was your point with the Alex Kerfoot thing? Like, what was your, like, whole general point? So after
while I was watching the game yesterday, right, and it ended up improving for these three guys. I think all three of them got a few pluses there that night, last night. But straight up, I was looking at who was leading in terms of plus minus on the Leafs this year. Which again, at this little games, I would never actually hold a plus minus rating to a severe, like, oh, now you're worth $3 million more per year because look at your plus minus after 26 games or whatever. Like, I'm not saying that, but I like to just look and see if the theory's holding up or whatever. And I see who's in on the top of the team, and it's Kerfoot, Riley, and Brody, right? And then you look at the game they had last night after I'd already come to that conclusion, and then, like, look, they had a great night last night. Now, obviously, that's not going to happen every night, right?
Yeah.
But it was just kind of good timing, so I like to just, talk about it then as well. That, like, it was brought up to me that, Kerfoot's now playing with Nylander a lot. Right? Yeah. So there is that factor too. And Nylander's been hot. He's been having some offensive drive lately. You know what I mean? He's looking good out there. So, perhaps Kerfoot is just riding the coattails of Nylander, and that's how he's getting all those pluses. But I'm like, Nylander's only a +4 though. So even if you took the +4 that Nylander was a part of away from Kerfoot, he's still rocking a +12. You know what I mean? And that's kind of the theory, is that, like, as you get really separated, there's got to be something you're doing to get that success. It can't all be luck, because over time, you know what I mean, I'm going to affect more than is affected by me, I think.
So like last year, Kerfoot was a +2 on the season.
Not too good. And before that, a -2.
He was minuses basically.
And then worse in Colorado.
Yeah.
I know.
But there's this... There's this interest of, I'm going to plug my Substack here for a second. And this is pure coincidence. This worked out so well for me. There's an article that was, I didn't write, no, I didn't write this. I want to be clear. I didn't write this.
Oh, sure. Plausible deniability. I see. All right.
No, I hired out a couple people to write articles for me over the summer. Because I wanted to get more content out there. I might start using my Substack more though. It's something I'm looking into.
If you want purely fan-driven nonsense for an article, you let me know, all right? I'll help you out with that. Right.
But there's an article that was posted on August 23rd, 2021. I can send you the link if you don't believe me.
I believe you. I believe you. You put it up in the Instagram post or something.
There's an Instagram post correlated to it as well. But the title of the article is "Why Alex Kerfoot Could Be the Key to the Leafs' Success in 2021." And the entire article is based obviously in analytics and proving that, he could be in for a really good breakout year this season.
Yep.
And I mean, here we are. So I think.
So you're trying to say with a comment like that, and I'm not trying to be rude. I don't want to see where it's coming from. You're trying to say that analytics was ahead on this one on me, right? I'm only just saying it now, and analytics predicted this back in October, right? That's what you're saying, right?
Yes. That's kind of the point.
I can answer that for you. You know exactly why that is?
Why?
Because I'm a father of two and I don't have time for this. All right, I shouldn't have to do this. All right, I shouldn't have to point it out at all. And the fact that I have to point it out at all in January because people still don't recognize that Kerfoot exists and how awesome he's doing. I'm sorry. All right, if I was an analytics guy and I had this as a job that I could do this full time, I bet you mine comes through quicker. That's all I'm gonna say on that. But what are you saying about that?
But I think, and obviously, I mean, this seems like an anecdotal piece of evidence, but I mean, there's so many players that the analytics community has been really high on,
I know this.
A year or two before they break out in like their base stats.
Yep.
And I think that's kind of my issue with plus minus as well as an evaluation tool, because even if we concede that it does accurately show how a player's like succeeding on the ice, it's still based on offensive production in the point, like in the area of goals scored, right? Because at the end of the day, that's what plus minus is tracking, is goals on the ice and just who is there.
Yes, but I still have a fundamental problem with that. I apologize for cutting you off, but like, I still like
it
zero.
Like from the
I
base,
still like it zero.
Sure. But like from the base fundamental standpoint of how the stat is tracked, it's did the puck go in the net and who is on the ice. Yeah. Like that's the core, right? So I think there's a lot of other things on the ice, and by event, I mean, like I'm using the NHL's definition, which is basically like anything that happens on the ice ever. So for them, it's like a goal is considered one event, and there could be other events. Like obviously, there's other events that lead up to that goal, but from what plus minus is concerned for is just the one event of the puck going in.
See, and I know you said that before, and I apologize, but like to me, it's not tracking that; it's tracking the result of all those plays before it. You know what I mean? So
sure, and I think my issue with that is the fact that we don't know what those plays were by looking at plus minus.
Right, but you don't know that by XG or anything else too. Like that's what I'm saying is that you're about to say now about, and I apologize if I'm putting words in your mouth, but I've heard you saying this stuff about how you're going to go into the different ways to track that success, right? Based on a bunch of different numbers. And isn't that better to have a more detailed view than just a plus minus, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that though. But what I'm saying is if we can find a pointer to show us where we will find the good analytics beforehand. And now you're saying from personal experience earlier that was not the case when you tried it, right? And that's the thing, is that I'm like, I hear you on that, and I really, please don't mean any disrespect by this, but maybe you didn't know what you were looking for. And I don't mean, again, maybe I don't know what I'm looking for either. And that's really where this comes from, and I know it sounds insulting to people when I say this. You've obviously put a lot more time and effort into trying to figure out this game from an analytics department than I have. But if there's one thing I know from looking into this stuff, and that goes for a lot of science and stuff, is that the more we question, the more we realize how little we actually know and how many assumptions are actually being made about the things we find. So, I maybe you did nail it, and I totally believe you that's what you found, is that the plus minus thing wasn't helping you. But maybe you didn't know what to look for. You know what I mean? Is there a possibility that you could admit that even I might have missed something or two, right? Maybe I didn't figure this thing out.
I mean, like everybody's like, nobody's gonna like. I'm not here trying to say that I've mastered knowing how to evaluate players, because
but you're done with plus minus. It has no bearing in your life whatsoever. You're never gonna look at it again.
I think.
Or do you think there could be value there that we're just not finding out yet?
I think how I think plus minus could be properly used, if used at all, is in the sense of getting a base evaluation of players on your own team. I think there's far too many variables and environmental factors when comparing a player on like Carolina to a player on Arizona. Yeah. I think there's way too much variant, like regardless of how much you think one individual affects like the play, there's just way too many like the reality is, like, if you play for the Coyotes, it's more likely than not you're gonna have a negative by the end of the season.
Good point, and I want to cut you off here just because I want to not skip over that. Okay, because that's a very good point. One thing that even I didn't realize until you were bringing it up, I wasn't really thinking about it. You know what I mean? I just wanted to see what would happen, and I start putting the theories to the test, and I start going, okay, well, what do all the bottom teams look like? All the bottom teams in the league, right? What do their plus minuses look like? Oh crap! You know what? There's a lot of minus here, and not a lot of plus, right? And it makes sense because these teams are losing. But I didn't think about that in terms of like how to come up with this rating even. I'm being honest here, right? I wasn't thinking that far ahead. That like, oh, I wonder what the bottom teams look like, right? So that's what I started looking into. And then that's when I figured out, and again, I wouldn't have figured this out had you not questioned me on it. Again, this is the rabbit hole that is plus minus if you're willing to join me. It's that maybe it's more like a pie ratio where it's not like a rating to determine who's necessarily awesome and who's not, but more like if we look at who's succeeding, right, and we look at the top, and then we use your advanced analytics, all the different categories you've got to rate a player and figure out how they're really making up who they are, maybe we look for someone with a minus on one of those bottom teams we're talking about, like a minus 10, a minus 15 for the season, a minus 22, you know what I mean? It's up there, but their analytics still match. Do you know what I mean? So it's like we almost found a successful player through your analytics because we realized that put them into a better situation, get rid of those intangibles of the team weighing them down. Not only do we have a good player, but we have a good player that's been undervalued. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I know that what you mean by saying that, like, you know, looking at somebody with a minus 22, it doesn't mean anything. You were using the Ryan O'Reilly example. I don't remember exactly what his stats were, but looking at his minus being so bad, like, it doesn't mean he was a bad player, right? And I agree with you on that. But maybe there was a way we could have seen him even sooner if we took the successful players and just found the same analytics. You know, kind of like backdoored our way into that. So that's all I'm doing is I'm trying to throw this number around, this plus minus stuff and this intangibility. And if you're willing to just, like I'm telling you, man, your own spare time, I don't expect you to admit it on camera or nothing like that. I wouldn't if I were you wearing that jersey, right? But have some fun with it, man. And just imagine for a night, okay, when you're off camera, what if plus minus really is the thing? And use your brain to do it. Because, yeah, it might not be plus minus divided by games played. That might be amateur hour. But maybe, I'm just telling you, if you go down the rabbit hole, you might find some fun in it and at least be able to make fun of other hockey guys when you watch their minds blow, when you go in there with plus minus and start freaking them out because all your guys are coming up positive. You know what I mean? I highly recommend it. Maybe try it out.
I see my kind of thing, right? And my rebuttal to that is, if a player has really good like underlying numbers, right? Like you said, right? They're minus, but like their intangibles or their intangibles, their underlying numbers say that they're actually like a really good player. I don't kind of understand like what would be the reason to use plus minus at all.
I know what you're saying. So what you're saying then is, if that's the way I'm going to go about it, then why not just search for the people with the same analytics? Just don't even look about plus minus. Let's figure out the analytics of the people that we want to search for, filter them out of the equation, and then we'll find ones that are minus 22. Like plus minus doesn't even have to do with anything. It's just we'll find one that's undervalued because our analytics show success as well, right?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, the problem there is I don't think what you guys are finding with a lot of the details is success. I think you are okay. It's more like Criminal Minds. You guys are coming up with player profiles. This is who the player is. Whether or not they're successful can be determined by all kinds of external factors, and that's where the team comes in, right? That's where a coach comes in. That's where a GM comes in and finds the pieces of the puzzle that's going to match their team. But really, what you're doing is you're finding a player profile, not success, right? So yeah, you might see that profile works for some players, but then you see other players that have success in the league that don't fit that model whatsoever. And you might call them outliers, or you might call them, you know what I mean? I guess outliers is it. That's pretty much the only word. I don't know. But maybe they're not. Like maybe there's something there that we're missing in that, right? That we write off. So I don't know, man. Like to me, I just feel like something's up. I feel like it's not what we're being told it is. And I think it has to do with the fact that if details don't show. Like, Okay, yeah, go ahead. I'm gonna think about what I'm saying here, but you go ahead.
So if like in Ryan O'Reilly's case, for instance, right? Like that was the example that we brought up. So he was like I think he was like a minus like 25 or something this last like. I think he was like I think it was like a minus 50. I don't have the notes in front of me, but it was like a minus 50 something over his last 3 years in Buffalo. Like how in that case, right? If you're looking at a player like that who has really good underlying numbers, like how would you consider that like a successful player by the plus minus like rating? Because I mean his plus minus like is awful.
Right. Okay. So good point there. And the reality is you might be right. You might even be right that he was doing nothing wrong really other than just being on a bad team. But again, with the intangibility that I'm trying to achieve here, I'm trying to take into account things that I don't see, things I can't possibly know. Some guys still find a way to thrive on bad teams. And I don't mean necessarily getting a bunch of plus and looking like a superstar. But some guys find a way to thrive, right, in bad situations, at least better than their peers, right? A team doesn't have to weigh them down if they're making a lot of the small decisions correct. And because that exists, that's why it's like, he's got to take some of the blame. Like the example would be as well. We were talking about Eichel before, right? Like as much as Eichel is an elite skilled player, no doubt, some of that Buffalo failure is on him. It has to be. It has to be because he was a part of it. So because of that, I can't completely absolve him of it. So, I'm always willing to look at a player with their intangibility rating or even just a plus minus and say like, okay, that might not be a little fair because he's on Arizona. But at some point, though, I'm not going to take off as much as perhaps everything. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not absolving the guy. The reality is you're a professional. You have to step up. You know what I mean? And sometimes guys like, and it could be an Eichel, and I don't mean to say that this is, but there's guys in a position like his that they actually have a horrible attitude. And that they could have been better sooner if they were more of a team player or they were more welcoming or they were more encouraging or whatever else. And we will never see that. And yet he could be having a negative excess or a negative effect on his team members. So because we know that exists, how do you account for that? You know what I mean? So I'm trying to.
Yeah, I mean locker room stuff like that, etc. Like that all obviously matters like a ton. But I don't think a stat like plus minus accounts for that either. Like there's nothing in it. I think you might be overthinking what the stat shows in that case.
Maybe.
Because like
on me.
like because like I mean again Ryan O'Reilly he was a guy that he's like the perfect example for this. It's incredible. Because even when he was in Colorado and in Buffalo, like one of the big things about him was he like the reports, and again the reports said that he had a lot of attitude issues in the room,
right?
And he wasn't a good locker room guy. And actually I did some one of my things is when you're evaluating players, I vouch for looking at the last 3 years of a player. To get like a more holistic picture, because like
people can change, but at the same time there is a pattern going on. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, but like I mean, if you go further than that, if you go like 10 years, it becomes irrelevant, right? Because like Joe Thornton 10 years ago isn't the player he is today, right? Like so I think 3 years is kind of the sample that I think a lot of people kind of agree with, and it seems like most it was something that I was doing pre analytics, but like basically every analytics site has a 1 year, 3 year time frame.
Yeah, I like that. You gotta have a window, man. You can't go back forever, for sure.
Yeah. And since 2018, right? And I use 2018 because of the two half seasons, and we're only like 20 games into this season. So I'm adding the extra full season to this. But Ryan O'Reilly jumped up to 32nd in intangibility rating in the NHL.
Yep.
See, I have a whole spreadsheet in front of me here. I did the research. I got your stat here. And I think going from like, I think it was like a minus 49 in his last 3 years in Buffalo to 32nd in the league 3 years, like the 3 years later, that's a big jump. And that jump isn't because, I mean, maybe it, but again, like his goals above replacement didn't like fluctuate at all. Like it is very stable through those 6 years. And it just, I think it's too much of a team dependent variable.
See, but is it though? Okay, so that's what I'm saying though. So like we cannot figure out how much of that is O'Reilly's ability to just or O'Reilly's fortune of playing on a better team, right? Which we can all agree is definitely part of the equation, or how much Ryan O'Reilly couldn't rise up from a bad team. You know what I mean? Like, we don't know. There's no way we can know how much of a mental, like, maybe was Buffalo so bad that even the best players in the world would be so mentally beaten down by them? Or is Buffalo not that bad of a place if people can actually finally rise to the challenge there? Like, if they finally got some pieces in place that could just mentally be like, screw it, I'm going out there and I'm doing my best and I don't care what anybody says. I'm proud to be a Sabre. I'm proud to be here. And I'm just going to have a blast doing what I do. I mean, that can make an effect too, right? And it's that kind of stuff that we can't measure. So it's like, I hear what you're saying, that obviously Ryan O'Reilly found himself in a better position, right? Like a better situation, I should say. But it also doesn't account for how much he might have mentally just given up on the Sabres, that he was done. And it was like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but don't you think, like, if he were to, not put in the same amount of effort or whatever, like, if that's the string of thought, right? And I mean, I can appreciate that, right? Like, playing on a team like Arizona, it's going to be tough on guys. But wouldn't his analytics drop off as well? Like, wouldn't his ability to drive play drop as well?
If his own personal success was being affected by the team or whatever, because of his own mental ability or whatever like that, then it would show up in the analytics. And you're absolutely right. Yeah. If it's physically there. But like I said, it's more about attitude and stuff like that at the time, or like just team chemistry. There is this thing as you've been out there, you've seen what it's like on the ice. If you don't have a certain level of team chemistry, a thing that we cannot measure, like, a team's just not going to succeed if everyone's fighting. You know what I mean? They individually might be doing their jobs in terms of blocked shots, in terms of clearing attempts, in terms of power play goals, whatever else you want to measure. They might be doing their job, but they're not seeing the wins. And trying to figure out why they're not seeing the wins can sometimes be a real challenge, as I'm sure you've been through.
I feel like, how does plus minus account for that?
Because it doesn't care. Because, okay, so the theory behind the whole plus minus thing is that, look, you have to admit, just like any other way of tracking players, that there are going to be some players that slip through the cracks. And there's going to be some players that look incredibly good, and we know that. So let's establish the fundamentals of what we're aiming for here, right? We know that's going to happen, right? We also know that, like, if you're one of 5 players on the ice when the puck goes in, right, that the other 4 people could have done all the work and not you, theoretically. Absolutely. On that one plus, absolutely.
Yes.
And that's going to happen sometimes. There's also going to be times, hypothetically, where you're the only one that did the work, and the other 4 were going for a line change, and you potted one because the goalie was falling asleep or something like that, right? That's all you. You had the tenacity to go in there, face them all, and just throw it on net, and you scored. But they're going to get the thing, too, because they haven't left the ice yet, so that's going to happen, right? The thing is, even though you might be on a great line, it gets to the point where, at some point, you're by yourself. You're separated from those people that gave you success. Over a long enough time, like, say, 3 years, I like that mark, you know what I mean? Or even a year, right? Each end of season, let's reevaluate and see where everybody's at. That's not a bad way to go. But you're going to be separated from the people you're with most often, more often than you're going to be with them. Like, you'll be with the same guys more often than anyone else singularly. But there's things that happen on the fly. Things are changing all the time. Lineups change and everything like that. Guys get injured. Like, there's a lot of time where you're actually away from the people you're supposed to be playing with. So, how is it that the same people that keep getting success, it doesn't seem to matter when they're on different lineups or when they're on different teams over their careers or anything like that? Guys go through changes, and yet they still find ways to succeed. Like, and it's not a little bit. It's a lot of guys. It's a lot of guys that do this. So, like, what is it? What are we missing?
I think that's an interesting point about players in different situations. And one of the things that is great about a lot of the sites, and this is actually a free thing that you can do. I think it's on Evolving Hockey, but it's a comparison. I think it's called the comparison tool, and you can basically take a player and you can look at, like, his minutes played with every other player and, like, every line that he's been on, and it breaks down all of the stats right to goals for and goals against, all the way to, like, his Corsi and expected goals and all that, with that line. And you can kind of see, like, on each line how that fluctuates, and with each player how that fluctuates. And even breaking it down to that level gives you more detail than just
for sure. Okay,
what a plus minus would.
Nah, that's not the question I'm posing though, right? Like I hear you on that, and that's why as soon as I figure that out, of like why is that person, why is Kerfoot a plus 12 or a plus 16 when Nylander's only a plus 4 and they're supposed to be playing a lot together, right? So I would go to you for stuff like that right after and be like, tell me what's going on here. Give me the profile of what's going on with Kerfoot. What's happening there, right? But the point is we still found the success. Like, is it not still working to at least try and find the success? You know what I mean? Like, what are we defining as success as well? Like, this stuff gets it gets complicated, right?
Yeah, I think from a coaching perspective, I think there's value in plus minus in the fact that it shows that your system's working.
Okay.
In the fact that, like, obviously if like even if you don't think there's any value in the stat at all, like if you just think plus minus is the worst thing in the world and it doesn't give you anything. If all your players are plus 20s, you're probably winning a hell of a lot of hockey games.
Yes. Okay. So you know what I mean? There's still something to that.
Yeah, I think even from a base level like that, like just evaluating your system, I think there's advantages to it. But I think where there's a disconnect is I don't think it's very useful in evaluating individual players compared to the environment that they're in, because you're not accounting for any of that kind of environment. And
I think it accounts for itself though. We're not detailing it, right? But like, okay, so a couple comments here I just want to say from okay in the chat here, because it brings up some good points. The Kerfoot one first, that doesn't mean that he's necessarily playing better than Nylander, and that's I want to get that off the board right now. But I'm not saying he's playing better than Nylander, right? What we're saying is he's playing his role, whatever they're paying Kerfoot to do. Get pucks back or put pressure on or whatever else he's supposed to be doing to help earn positive effect on his team. I think plus minus is showing that he's doing it. And I think that's a fair assessment, because it has to be. Like, what are we measuring here if not that with a plus minus? Why has it been around for so long? Why do we always just ignore it? Like we say about the variables, but again, like it's got to be something that we're missing with Kerfoot. And like you said, your analytics saw it. So like, I don't say that we're necessarily saying that he's better than Nylander. It's he's completing his role, what they're paying him to do, his assignments, whatever he's expected to do. So it doesn't mean someone's better, and I think we agree on that, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's the same
that's not
thing.
To determine who's elite and who's not and stuff.
Yeah, and that kind of goes for everything too, because I mean, like you can't, even though like modern analytics like account for like situations like, score and line mates and opponents and all that, you still can't like compare Valeri Nichushkin to Connor McDavid and say that if they were to swap roles, Valeri Nichushkin would have had 100 points last year.
Oh, of course not.
Yeah, and I think people who try to do that just like don't know how to use the stat.
Yeah, it's stupid. There's no way. That's not what we're doing.
Yeah. So I understand the theory of saying like, hey, this guy's, plus 16, he's doing really well in his role. But I think you can also find guys who are minus 16 playing the same role that might be doing better. And they're just not getting the bounces.
That's the point. Okay, so that's the point, is that like when I talk about using this stat of like intangibility as like a defining factor for me, if I had those two players, let's say I got hypothetically two players that are winning the same amount, or not winning the same amount, they've got the same amount, like the same analytics, you know what I mean? Like they look like the same profile, they're having the same skills, they're affecting their team positively the same ways in all the ways you calculate, right? And then one is a minus, 22 and one is a plus 22. If they're the same money, I'm going for the plus 22 every time, because at least I know that person is already in a positive headspace. They're already coming out of success. They're feeling good about themselves. There is something to that. Now, we might screw it up for them game one. Game one, we might do something stupid and ruin it for that player, and it turns out we screwed up. It's true. Maybe that is true. But you know what I mean? Just if they were identical, but I got one with a plus and I got one with a minus, like drastically different, then I would go with the plus every time, because that's where I'm coming from, is that like, success finds people sometimes, you know what I mean? It just finds them. So like, I don't know how it's doing it. We're trying to figure that out. But I'd take the one who's having success. Would you?
I think that's actually an interesting point. And I think that comes down to like where you would use this stat in that case, because in your first video you mentioned using it like at the end. And at the beginning, maybe I'm mishearing what you said, but in the response video that you made, you talked about using it like initially and then diving deeper in. And I think clarifying where you suggest using this stat.
Good. These are good questions because I had to think about it as well too before I started making videos about it, right? Like I had to think about this. Yeah. And so, yes. So if the goal is to find the success, I'm going to the plus minuses first. Like I'm going to the intangibility, right? I'm going to that made up stat of mine. I'm going to that first if my goal is to find success, right? But if I'm trying to compare two players, like because a team can be made up of an infinite combination of players to win a cup. We all know this. So if I'm evaluating my team and I go, like we need somebody to fill this kind of role to really complement the guys I have, I'm going to look for that kind of role first. Right, I'm going to get a list of however many guys my team can come up with of guys to fill that role. You know what I mean? And then if everything's looking, I might use the intangibility as the final factor. You know what I mean? Of like, okay, yeah, everything looks good here because they're going to fit the type of role that I, as a GM, want to see in my team. But out of those ones, now I want to see which one is succeeding the most at it. So that's what I mean to say that, like, when I say it's the most important, because I definitely said that. And if that made it sound like I only look at it first and then try and evaluate everybody, that's my own idiocy. I don't know how to speak quickly in videos. As you see on Twitch here, I'm a bumbling idiot, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm trying to do my best videos. So sometimes I look at videos I've done in the past. And I'm like, man, I meant to say it like this. That completely just, it doesn't mean what I meant it to say. So that's just the price of business, I think. But to me, it's most important because I can use it for so many different things. It's the thing that is most important to me because it's the thing we can't measure. I want to know what I'm missing. Because from there, I could figure out everything else. You know what I mean? If I'm going to start with the success first, I could figure out which pattern of success mine is going to be. If there's an infinite amount of everything in the world, right?
Yeah.
That also means that there's an infinite amount of those infinite things. So even though something is infinite, we might see the same pattern 4 or 5 times in our life in terms of like a good Stanley Cup champion. You might be watching hockey for 50 years, and in that time, you might see 4 teams that won the cup pretty much the same way. A couple variables along the way, but you know what I mean? Like they had the same essence of what success was.
I mean, teams, like, once you see success in a sport, like, teams will copycat that. So, yeah, I mean, like...
and then it begats more almost. You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly. So... it's a situation where any number of ways can win a cup. So I think if we find a stat, it doesn't have to be mine. Like that's where I'm at with this, right? I'm putting this question forward to you now, and anyone else that you know. Let's try and work on that. If we can find a stat that points to where the success is happening first, it'll allow us to find a way to recognize the things we're not measuring. Does that make sense? It's kind of abstract.
I understand. I understand what your point is. Like where you're coming from there, at least.
If in our findings we can account for the fact
happen. My patience is running thin.
Who's doing that? Oh, Pilsey's setting off a little alert there. If we can find, if when we're trying to find information, if we can finally start incorporating the fact that we don't know everything, and I know that might be weird to do, but if we can leave room for the variable, leave room for the fact that we don't know everything in every calculation that we do, I think that'll somehow get us more accurate numbers, if that makes sense. Because what it'll do is it'll create, rather than one option, it'll create multiple possibilities that could work. Then you can change up on the fly what your strategy is as a GM or as a coach or as a player or whatever else. We need to stop finding one singular answer. It's not there. So maybe plus minus is the closest thing we'll ever get because it's so obscure, it's so abstract, it's so out there, right? That it'll be the thing that at least gets us down the right path, if that makes any sense at all. Maybe that's the guiding factor. That's all I'm trying to, it doesn't have to be plus minus, but like we should be trying to aim for that, I think. What do you think?
I think the idea that you mentioned about like if you have 2 players that are like basically like in this weird hypothetical situation where you have 2 players that are like basically paid the same and basically have the same like underlying numbers, going with a player that could be in a better like mental headspace is an interesting theory, and I actually like can kind of get behind that.
Right? That's not bad.
I just don't know if that's going to be a situation that's going to come up a lot. I think you're overestimating how many times that happens. Because very rarely do you have two players that are like identical.
I know, maybe not identical, but I'm just trying to say that like your value in them. You know what I mean? However,
sure, yeah.
However you see it. So, one guy could be really good at hitting and not so good of a shot, but at the same time, you're like, this guy's a pretty good shot and almost equally as bad at hitting. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like I'm talking about, there could be differences in each individual variable, but the point is, in your mind, you're looking at these two players being like, I would take either one of them. Because let me tell you, dude, like I don't know if you've ever coached, right? I forget what you said. Sorry, did you coach before?
I coached basketball for 2 years, not hockey, but
was it tryouts based, or was it like a house league thing?
No, it was high school, so yeah, there's tryouts.
Right, so then you know what I'm talking about. Sometimes you got to make that decision, and you're like, oh man, like I could take either one of those kids right now, and they would be awesome. So what do I do? What do I do? You know what I mean? And if there was a way to try and get inside the things we don't understand, just to give us the edge, of figuring out, that draft pick over that draft pick. I'm sure, like, you know what I mean? They're all working at this. We all are. That's kind of the goal of this, right?
Yeah, no, for sure.
So, I mean, like, I don't know. Maybe it's best that we don't know all the details first. You know what I mean? Because maybe we're blocking our minds off of something we haven't seen before because it doesn't match the numbers that we're measuring, So my solution then is, if we're not going to go off by plus minus, I swear to God, I'm cool with it. We never have to use plus minus again. But then I want about, 10,000 more points of data added to each game. And I don't think the data community is ready for that. Because I want stuff like who's wearing what stick tape. I swear to God, I want it all. Because we got computers, man. You know what I mean? Like, we got computers. There's no reason we can't have people just sitting there typing this stuff in, and then the computer's got it. It's got it. You know what I mean? Like, do they spray water on their face during the game, adding weight to them, or do they stay dry the whole time other than sweat? You know what I mean? I want to know, man. Do people with short hair, you know what I mean? Do people with short hair succeed better because they got less weight, less sweat maybe? Or do the people with the long hockey flow, have better confidence? Like, I want to know all of it then. If we can't know what's intangible, then I want to know every tangible, right? That's where I'm at. Can you agree with that at least? Maybe we need more data then?
I mean, I wouldn't say we need more data in that sense, but I mean, yeah, like...
dude, I want to know who's going through a divorce. I want to know, you know what I mean? I want to know who's going through a divorce. I want to know who's, pet just died. Like, I want to know everything because, like, all of this stuff, I'm going to run it through my computer simulator that, like, guys that are smarter than me, like you, right, are going to run it for me and show me the formulas, and then we're going to run it, and it's going to go ding, 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 ding. Get Ryan O'Reilly because he's going to win you a cup. You know what I mean? Like, I will not stop until we're as close to that as possible. So maybe I'm wrong about all this, and I'm totally willing to accept that. But for now, just because it drives so much passion and discussion, I think it's the thing. It's the thing that's going to bring the analytics community together. Is the united hatred towards plus minus. I think that might work.
I mean, you kind of done that already. So.
I'll be that villain. Yeah, I'll be that villain, man. And by the way, before we get, because I think we got to probably get going soon. It's getting late for me. But before we go, I did want to quickly talk about. I did want to quickly talk about. People were mentioning Connor McDavid. Okay, so I don't know if you've seen the Edmonton games in the past couple days. There's been no Leafs, so I check them out, right? And
I watched one of them a couple days ago, but I've been kind of all over the place lately. But yeah.
Okay, cool. So two games ago, I think they were against New Jersey, and back and forth all night. McDavid gets 2 goals and ends up a -1. Okay. And then the game just yesterday or whatever it was, whoever he was against there, again, same situation, back and forth all night. And he's on the ice in overtime when they lose. Okay. Now in the game against New Jersey, okay, the final play that New Jersey had where they had the guy pulled and they need to try and tie it up, right? Not to win it, but to tie it. McDavid is the one taking the face off, right?
Sure.
And he ties the guy up, or he tries to dish the puck back so they can win it. He doesn't. The other guy ends up tying McDavid up even too, so he can't even skate away fast to challenge the point. New Jersey goes ahead and scores. What I'm saying is, am I putting all the blame on McDavid there? No, not at all. But when a guy's got a 52% face-off draw, and he's getting paid that amount of money to be an elite player, all I'm saying is you're expecting him to win. And then when he doesn't, a simple minus to just say, hey, look, you didn't get the job done. Not saying that like you're off the team now because you're a minus on that play, but just having a way to track that, I think, is important because that's his little contribution that he could have had a plus there, or like not a plus, but a 0. Walk away with the 0 on the play, and he didn't because he screwed up the face-off. He lost it, I should say. I mean, does he not get a little bit of blame for that?
Oh yeah, I mean, absolutely. But I don't think I don't know. I just have trouble attributing because
Right. So again, the next night, okay, because again, we always talk about plus minus is always, McDavid's is always being affected by the fact that he's on bad Edmonton teams. And while I do agree that it accounts for some of it for sure, it's the overtime yesterday, okay? And again, McDavid scored a bunch of goals, I think. Another 1 or 2 or 3. I don't know what he's got, a bunch. You know what I mean? He's so good. But offensively, he's so good. But in the overtime, it's 3-on-3, and it's a 1-on-2, dude. Like, I forget who it was, but someone's crossing the blue line, right? And McDavid's right there. He could have challenged him, but instead, he's coasting. He's not even moving his feet, and all he does is he lets his D-man try to do it, but his D-man held back because it looked like McDavid was going to go for him. But because McDavid didn't, now the D-man's out of position. He's like, oh, crap. He tries to push forward at the last second, but it's too late. The guy's now screening his own goalie, and they lose it in overtime. Like, that lack of hustle needs to be accounted for. And we don't have a stat necessarily that's going to show that. But in a way, plus minus does. Because now he's going to pick up a minus on that play, and he deserves it. Because that was a superstar elite mentality. That's one of those spoiled brat moves where he just thought like, oh, well, I'm the guy that scores goals. So, or maybe he just got mesmerized by the moment. I'm talking badly about the guy. I shouldn't do that. It's my own opinion. See, I'm guilty too, dude. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like, maybe he's mesmerized by the moment. The point is, he's at fault. He's at fault for that. Take your minus.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd encourage. I don't know how much you've looked into defensive metrics for analytics, but
they're harder to find. Yeah, I admit.
They are, yeah. But Micah Blake McCarty, Hockey Viz, does a ton of really, really cool work with situation analytics like that. And I'd encourage anybody who's interested to check him out. He's on Twitter and obviously has the website. But a lot of like positional things like that are starting to get accounted for now.
Cool.
So that's something.
But even then, though, doesn't that become kind of like objective, though?
I'm
saying he's out of position. Or I'm saying he didn't do his job. But maybe his coach said in a situation like that, I want him to pick up the extra man that's going to be skating in a second, and I want my D-man to challenge that puck carrier one-on-one. I don't know what the coaching decision is there. Maybe I'm the one who's wrong, thinking that it's McDavid's fault. Like, isn't that objective? Sorry, or subjective?
I guess in that individual situation it could be. But I don't know if there's a lot of coaches that would be telling their player to pull up on a 2-on-1 going the other way. But
I probably wouldn't. But yeah, if you see the play, I'm willing to allow some wiggle room there of like, because there is a guy breaking in behind the puck carrier, right? There is a guy breaking in behind the puck carrier, and if he gets left unchecked, he's going to go in untouched for a 2-on-1. So I do get the idea of picking up that man, but I felt personally at the time McDavid was close enough to the puck carrier that he should have lunged forward and tried to attack. The D-man should have swung over to the right to pick up the pass if it ever came through. But that's my way of measuring it. But maybe someone else measuring those for analytics purposes would be like, no, that's not his fault at all. I don't see it that way. Like, don't we find that even when we're counting these stats, right, there's some wiggle room for what people think is dangerous or what people think is advantageous, perhaps,
Just the way defensive analytics in general are really complicated. Like, they're way more complicated than offensive analytics because of positioning things like that. And they're done. Like, they're not. It's not like somebody's like sitting watching every play and It's not like Pro Football Focus who has guys grading every single play, and then giving them like a rating scale, which is how their site works. It's very much based on isolating a player, and I'm not going to get into all the math because I'd be here for another 2 hours. But it's based on isolating a player in the situation. I geek out
on this stuff. I love it. So
yeah. But again, I'd encourage it's really fascinating stuff, honestly. I really like Micah's model for that, especially because his comes with really pretty pictures that actually map out where a player's allowing chances from. It's really cool. But yeah, there's so much more that goes into defensive metrics, and it kind of eliminates the where this player should have done this on this one specific play, and it's more just kind of holistic. For lack of better wording, again, I'm trying to simplify it.
No, I know, man. Trust me, I'm we're just speaking as a conversation here. You know what I mean? We're trying to make sense of it as we go here.
Yeah. So I'd encourage people to look into defensive metrics because things like that are being accounted for. In some sense, obviously, nothing's perfect, and I don't think anybody's going to sit here and say that the way analytics have evolved even over the last 5-10 years. So I think like everything's changing, and the point, I guess, is that being able to find players before their like general stat, and by general stats I mean stuff you can find on NHL.com, indicate that they're really good is kind of the goal. And I think the analytics community's done that better than anybody else. And I'm not saying that to be like pretentious. I just think
I agree. I 100% agree, and I think that's what a lot of people on analytics sides of the conversation seem to take my showmanship. They seem to take it as like a spit in the face of all other analytics, and it's like, no, like I want people to be very clear about something. I like where this is going, but I'm just saying that from a guy on the outside, I'm not as close to it. So sometimes you get a better perspective of what's going on when you're a few steps back. That I'm just saying that I think there's some miscalculations or misinterpretations, I should say, of some of the data that I think we're collecting. And I think that you guys are all doing a much better job of getting to those mistakes sooner than I am anyways. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think you can agree that the information we're like a Corsi measurement doesn't mean what it used to mean anymore, because we're on to other things that are more detailed or more comprehensive or whatever else, right? So we're always striving for the better stuff.
For sure. And I mean, stuff like Corsi still has like some value in situational aspects. But yeah, I mean, like, it doesn't, like, for anybody who doesn't know, Corsi is literally just anytime you take a shot, you get like a boost in it. It doesn't care about whether the shot's blocked, doesn't care about whether it hit the net or not. It's just literally as soon, like,
shot attempts, right? Shot attempts.
Yeah, if you take a shot, then it counts as like a positive Corsi.
Which is dumb.
And it's the plus minus of analytics.
Oh, you low blow! Finally, you get some humor out of you. Jeez, come on. You're gonna light me up for 2 hours. You've been too nice.
I did. But I do actually kind of like the theory about plus minus could indicate a player's like mental situation on a team. However, I don't think it should be used to evaluate a player's on ice. What's the
success or whatever you might say, right? Like on ice performance.
Sure. Performance, yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. I just think it's too vague of a stat to indicate how an individual player is affecting a play with 5 other guys or I guess 10 other guys on the ice, or 9. But
goalie's in there too.
Yeah. So yeah, whatever, 11, whatever it is. But I think there could be some value in this guy's playing in a better situation, so he might come in a better headspace. But I mean, winning can do that to anybody, right? So you could take somebody off a bad team and like they start winning a bunch of games, and hey, they're happy again. So even then, I think it depends. I think it's very much an individual player thing. And I don't like we're never going to get to a place where unless we do like brain scans on every player after every game. I don't think. Which I mean, hey, like let's do it.
Right. But yeah. So imagine, and I'm not saying that what I've come up with is the answer, but imagine you could have a stat that in some way just kind of incorporates the things that are going on in a player's head, or the confidence that might happen in a single night compared to other nights or whatever like that, like all that stuff that we just, there's no way we're going to be able to count. Imagine if there was an indicator that you could have. Would you appreciate that indicator?
Yeah, that'd be hugely important. I mean, as somebody who's like worked with like a semi-pro hockey team, that's a huge part of it, is like which players are coming in hungover. Like we have to
like
kind of
all of
figure
it,
that
like
out
everything, right? Like who's got good work ethic? Who's mentally, foggy or hazy or for any reason, you know what I mean? Like you want to know about these things, and if we had a way to track it that goes beyond what we see, I think that'd be really beneficial, and I think a lot of people would agree, and I don't think I'm crazy for at least wanting to see that, and I think we can achieve it. So I hope I'll leave you on that. I'll say this to you, right? If you want to join down the rabbit hole when no one's looking, run some plus minus numbers in new ways. Just find new ways to mess with it and see if there's something you can come up with that'll get you like on the cover of Sports Illustrated or something. Because you're far smarter than I am, so you'll be able to BS it even better than I can. You know what I mean? You'll be able to have the ways that nobody even thought of, and then like before you know it, we'll have changed the world of hockey for the better. Nah, maybe not, but for the money for us, yeah, we will. All right.
I mean, I've been messing around with this spreadsheet quite a bit over the last couple of days, so.
Yeah. Did you want to put it up or anything before we go on? I guess you can't through this.
Oh, I don't know if I'd be able, but yeah, I basically took the top 150 players in plus minus over since 2018, and then I weeded out all the guys that were under 100 games played because
you gotta have some
sample
sort
size
of
you have. Yeah. So I did 100 games, whatever. It's random number I threw out there.
Sure.
And I've just been kind of like going through some players and breaking them down. I mean, one of the
on
players
this list?
One of the players that popped out to me is number 9, which was Michael Kempney, defenseman for the Washington Capitals. Yep. And so I was like, hey, why does this guy have? Because his analytic numbers are very mediocre.
Okay.
And I mean, he plays like a good third pairing defenseman, but he's been playing like first line minutes. And I think that's kind of the issue. But I mean, hey, as a third line defenseman, Michael Kempney's a pretty good player. But then you look at the guys that he's playing with, and it's like, well, he's the only defenseman he's been playing with is John Carlson, and it's like, oh, well, John Carlson rocks, so that might influence his plus minus a little bit. And like the situation he's
at the same time, if
ice.
Kempney's bad enough, doesn't he run the risk of influencing Carlson's? Like, isn't that a kind of a fair deal? Like a little bit.
Yes and no. I think one of the big things there, and again, I'm like trying to get out of here too, so I'm not going to go too far into this, but that's the guy. I appreciate it. It's fun. But I think one of the big things that's underappreciated on this is zone starts, which for the people out there that don't know is where a player starts their shift. And you can find guys that are being really sheltered. And one of those guys has been Michael Kempney, where he's starting most of his time either in the neutral zone or the offensive zone. And you see this on the other end. I think it was Paul Gaustad in like 2016 started and his offensive numbers were awful. Like he was one of the worst offensive players in the league that year, but his defensive metrics were fine analytically. And I'm not saying that Nashville was using analytics to play him like this, but just you could watch him play and he's a good defensive player, whatever. And he started like 1% of his zone starts that year in the offense. Like it was like 1.6%, which is insane. Like that doesn't happen. And it's just kind of crazy to see a player like that, where it's like
his player was basically put into positions where he's almost never going to catch a minus because of where he's starting each shift.
Yeah, like that or a player on the other hand, like Paul Gaustad, I think was like a -10 that year because he was never put in offensive situations. So I think stuff like that is important.
Okay, so it is important, but at the same time, okay, because again, let's try and pretend that we don't know what we're talking about here, either of us, right? What if it's a fact where the guy is supposed to be so good offensively, or he's got some sort of skill that they want on those offensive face-offs, whether it's in the zone or in the neutral zone, right?
Sure.
So does he not earn the spot then to do that? Like, if he's been working on skills that make him valuable for that position and not so much defensively, because they don't want him in their own zone, like, doesn't he still deserve that success? And vice versa, if a guy's always starting in his own zone, right? Isn't he expected not to get scored on? Like, he might not get as much plus. You're right. So in that case, like I said, a 0 is very valuable to me. I like players that can finish 0. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Or close to it, even -1, -2 for a season. Like a -1, I'm laughing at that, going, yeah, that's fine. Like, depends on their role, right? So if it's a situation like that, I'm constantly throwing them in my own zone. My criteria of what I consider acceptable for plus minus will change. You know what I mean? Should they not? Should they not still get recognition though for doing the thing that they did? You know what I mean? Like,
I think that's kind of like it's kind of like everything. Like I think if you have a guy that you're playing in offensive, like I think I can't remember who else was up there. I think like Tyson Barrie was one of those guys that was getting a lot of like sheltered offensive minutes. And if you look at his offensive analytics, even they weren't bad. And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, but his defensive metrics sucked. And it's like, well, you can kind of understand why he's not playing in this defensive zone.
Right.
And I think you can gauge more information out of that once you get to specifics, rather than just is he on the ice for goals, which you can still look at. Like I don't think that's irrelevant. But I mean, if a guy is generating a bunch of high danger offense and the guys he's passing to just aren't putting the puck in the net, or you're playing or you get like Thatcher Demko in the playoffs like Vegas did. Mm-hmm. That's it. There's other situations that a player can't, that an individual player can't affect. And I think that's important because you can miss out on a lot of information when you're looking at something that an individual player may or may not be able to affect themselves.
Right. So
and
you're
trying
saying
to get to
You're trying to focus on the fact that, you know, a shift could go badly, and yet they still have found success for themselves, and it won't show up in my measurement. And you're absolutely right about that.
Yeah, I think the goal, especially from a team-based perspective, is to find guys that you want to eliminate the other factors as much as possible. Like, that's the goal, right? Because you don't want to trade for Zach Kassian because he had a really good season playing alongside Connor McDavid. Because spoiler alert, Zach Kassian on your first line in Buffalo isn't going to score 30 goals.
Right.
Or, you know, maybe he will. I don't know.
Although some teams have tried that method of thinking. Some teams have tried that and it did not work out.
Yeah, I mean, it worked. Like Vancouver did. They they spent $15 million on a bunch of guys who had decent base numbers, and you know, Louis Eriksson and Jay Beagle aren't even on the team anymore, and Tyler Myers sucks. So
yeah,
I think you can get into dangerous territory when you're evaluating players based on statistics that don't even try to. And again, I'm not saying that the analytics we have today are perfectly isolating players, because I would be like that. Sure. It's not the case. But when you're not trying to do that at all, or you're just assuming that that they're helping or hurting their team based on those stats, you can get into dangerous territory. And I mean, we've seen real teams in the NHL make mistakes by trying to do that.
Yeah.
So I think again, like there is value to players being on the ice a lot in good situations, but if they're not the ones primarily leading that success, I think you can expect those numbers to drop if they get put into a worse situation. But again, a guy like Connor McDavid, who's, you know, more often than not going to be the primary reason for success when he's on the ice, I think we can agree on that. Putting him in a better situation will improve those numbers.
Yes, but I also think he's just not as good in other situations on the ice as people give him credit for. I think he's
I mean, Connor McDavid specifically is fascinating because his defensive metrics aren't very good. And one of the reasons for that is, and this has actually been, I forget who posted an article about it. Somebody wrote about it. But they basically went through and they're trying to figure out why his defensive metrics weren't very good. And it was because he's basically forced to chip offensively, because he has to like him and Draisaitl carry I think they're over 50% of Edmonton's offense over the last 2 years. It's insane. And the reason for that is because they both are basically forced to chip offensively, and this is a system thing. Because they when they aren't on the ice, Edmonton gets heavily outscored. So if those guys pinch a little bit offensively, they can get 2 or 3 goals a game combined or whatever, and you're hoping that's enough. And again, that's just Edmonton's roster is terribly built. But one of the reasons for those guys' defensive lapses is due to the way that the team is built. And in a better system, I mean, Connor McDavid last year had really good defensive metrics, and the team was a lot better than they are. They performed better overall.
So they performed better overall last year because he had a better defensive play, you're saying, right?
Well, yeah, and they're also playing Ottawa 12 times a year, but...
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Last year was weird. It's really hard, especially from we saw a lot of very strange last year, analytically, because it's hard to measure guys when they're playing 6 teams, so...
Yeah, well, I mean, honestly, dude, you got some good points there, and I hate to cut you off, but, it's been 2 hours. We've got a marathon going on here. I was only planning on one, but, it just kept going. And, dude, it was a lot of fun. I really, really, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for being a part of this. I really do, man. I've been dying to have some, some people eat up content time for me so I don't have to worry about everything, And it's nice for you to come out and just, get log 2 hours of stream time with me on Twitch here. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody has any questions, but I don't know who lasted this whole thing. If you did, thanks.
There's some people in the chat. Say hello in the chat if you're still there, man. Yeah, trust me, there's some people still there.
But yeah, I mean, if anybody ever wants to, they have questions about anything that I talked about here or whatever, feel free to send me a message. I got a whole bunch of posts pinned on my I have an analytics tab at the top of my Instagram page with I think there's 50 posts in there that you can read through that all have information on a lot of the stuff that I talked about in far more detail. Also, Evolving Hockey has a podcast where they're going over the methods of tracking all their stats. Cool. They have a series going on there. So again, there's information out there. There's a lot of free sites too. People have this idea that analytics are behind paywalls. Money Puck's free, Natural Stat Trick's free.
Nice.
I encourage people to mess around with them and just check them out.
Yeah, I dabble.
Even if you don't agree with the numbers, I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I think discourse is important. I think you can grow as, like we said at the beginning, I think being able to grow with discussion is important. And I mean, if you ever want me to come back on, I'll be happy to.
Dude, I'd be happy to have you
again for another 2 hours.
We'll figure it out. You're definitely going to come back sometime. It's been too much fun. Everyone in the chat's having a blast listening to you and listening to me and everything like that. So you should see everybody saying hi now. I don't know if you can see it, but it's
no,
nice.
I have it open on my phone, but
yeah, they're all still here, man. They're all still having a good time with us. So again, man, I appreciate you at least giving me the respect of treating me like an adult. You know what I mean? And then making a video, you know what I mean, breaking down why you think I'm an idiot. You know what I mean? At least you took the time to really break it down. You know what I mean? Instead of just brushing me off like a jackass. You know? So I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, of course. I mean, like I said, like the discourse is important. That's how you learn, and that's how we get new ideas. And I think, especially in like, I don't want to get too like meta here, but especially in like the way the world is today, nobody wants to ever talk about anything. They all just want to like fight each other, and you're never gonna develop as any kind of society or anything with that. So I mean, we're just talking about hockey stats,
man. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like,
that's why I'm glad you're here, and I hope you know that everyone in the chat here that's for you, everyone that was against your points, everybody at least respects that about you. I guarantee you. So if you ever want to hang out with people here, we got a lot of good people that come out that just it's about talking. Whether we agree or not doesn't matter. It's about just having these conversations, because it's how we're gonna fix everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
To get meta. You know what I mean? Yeah.
100%.
All right, man. Well, thanks again. Peace, brother, and we'll be chatting again soon. Okay?
Yeah, for sure.
All right, take it easy, bud. That's George right there. Okay? That's George. All right, I gotta end him. Oh, he's ending himself there too, so I don't have to. Good. Oh my goodness, you made it, guys. You made it. You made it. Whew, hopefully that was awesome. Hopefully you had a good time. I mean, I know I did. That's a nice solid 2 hours right there that we just, killed. Just killed together. Had a lot of fun. So, thank you all. Thank you all. I hope you had a good night. I hope you're having a good New Year as well. And let's stay friends, okay? Let's welcome the MBI community into our little world here, and let's be good hosts and stuff like that, and make connections. And keep spreading that hockey love, man. We're all hockey fans in the end, right? We're all hockey fans in the end. And if we're hockey fans, if we're true hockey fans, we're in it because we love the game. It means we're always going to be a little bit more alike than we are different. Right? You know it's right. All right, guys, take it easy. Thank you so much. Bless you all in the chat. Thank you so much for tonight, okay? Peace.